Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Shakyamuni. 153 verses from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. Through many a birth I wandered in samsara, seeking, but not finding, the builder of the house. Sorrowful is it to be born again and again. The Blessed One spoke this verse to reveal the deep truth of cyclic existence, the suffering inherent in repeated birth, and the urgency of seeking liberation. Long ago, there was a monk who, in his meditative practice, reflected on countless lifetimes he had wandered through, seeking security, happiness, and understanding. In each birth, he had striven to find lasting peace, yet the sense of dissatisfaction, the shadow of impermanence, and the subtle anxieties of life followed him like unceasing companions. He realized that the house, the body, the family, and the world, though familiar, were not the source of lasting fulfillment. They were impermanent, constructed by causes and conditions, and ultimately could not provide security. In his meditation, he contemplated the builder of the house, the source of this cycle, the cause of birth and rebirth. He saw that craving, ignorance, and attachment were the architects, constructing the house of suffering again and again. Reflecting on this, sorrow arose in his heart, for birth without awakening meant continued wandering in samsara, repeating the same patterns of pain and dissatisfaction. The monk understood that every birth brings aging, sickness, and death. Even in moments of pleasure, the impermanence of life casts its shadow, revealing that all conditioned things are transient. By seeing clearly the house that has been built and rebuilt by ignorance and craving, he awakened a determination to find liberation, to cultivate insight, and to uproot the causes of repeated birth. He observed that many beings, caught in worldly pursuits, labor, pleasure, and desire, remain blind to the builder, unaware that their attachments lead to ongoing cycles of suffering. The monk, however, trained his mind to be attentive, to observe the arising of desire, aversion, and delusion, and to cultivate wisdom and compassion. He studied the teachings of the Buddha, listening to the Dhamma, reflecting upon it, and practicing diligently. Through mindfulness, he saw that each moment of life, each thought and action, contains the seeds of future birth, and that freedom comes from the understanding and cessation of craving. In daily life, even while tending to simple tasks, the monk turned each action into practice, observing impermanence, cultivating non-attachment, and developing clarity. He understood that the sorrow of repeated birth can be alleviated through insight, ethical conduct, and meditative cultivation. He reflected on past lives, recalling the countless forms he had assumed, the countless attachments and desires that had guided him, and the many moments of suffering endured in ignorance. Through reflection, he gained insight into the nature of samsara. Birth and death are not arbitrary, but arise from causes and conditions, from craving and unawareness. To find the builder of the house, the root of suffering, is to see clearly the causes, to cultivate wisdom, and to practice diligently until liberation is realized. The monk observed that many beings strive endlessly for wealth, honor, and comfort, believing these will bring happiness. Yet they remain trapped in the same cycles of birth and death. Each attachment, each unwholesome action, strengthens the house and builds new foundations for future suffering. Only by understanding the causes, by cultivating virtue, concentration, and insight can one dismantle the house and transcend the cycles of samsara. The monk's practice included ethical living, meditation, and reflection. He observed the mind with care, noting the arising of desires, aversions, and delusions, and gently letting them go. He cultivated loving-kindness toward all beings, recognizing that all share the sorrow of repeated birth. Through this, his heart became spacious, his mind calm, and his understanding clear. He saw that liberation is not found in external forms, nor in wealth, status, or physical pleasure, but in the mind fully awake, free from craving and ignorance. He also reflected on impermanence. Bodies decay, relationships change, fortunes are lost, and death comes inevitably. Even the most beautiful or beloved forms pass away. By seeing this clearly, he developed detachment, not in a sense of cold indifference, but as the serene understanding that clinging leads to sorrow, while letting go leads to freedom. The monk realized that the sorrow of repeated birth is a mirror, reflecting the urgency of practice and the preciousness of human life. Each moment is an opportunity to cultivate wisdom, ethical conduct, and insight, to see the builder of the house, and to act in ways that dismantle the causes of suffering. Through reflection, meditation, and ethical practice, he gradually removed the foundations of craving and delusion, and the cycles of birth and death began to lose their grip. In this way, he understood that all beings, though caught in samsara, can find freedom through diligent practice. The sorrow of repeated birth is profound, yet it also inspires determination, courage, and effort on the path of liberation. By cultivating mindfulness, ethical conduct, concentration, and insight, one can awaken to the truth, see clearly the builder of the house, and dismantle the foundations of suffering. The monk's life became a living example. Through patient practice, careful observation, and steadfast effort, the mind, once wandering endlessly in samsara, can awaken to peace, freedom, and the realization of the Dhamma. Each day, each moment, became an opportunity to uproot craving, to cultivate wisdom, and to benefit countless beings, revealing that while sorrow arises from repeated birth, liberation is possible through understanding, effort, and insight. The teaching of the Blessed One guided him in every thought, word, and deed, showing that freedom is not in searching outwardly, but in awakening inwardly, seeing clearly the causes of birth, and living with insight, compassion, and virtue. The monk, having reflected deeply upon the sorrow of repeated birth, began to consider the countless beings wandering through samsara, caught in the endless cycle of birth, aging, sickness, and death. He observed that each being, no matter how powerful, wealthy, or learned, is subject to the same fundamental truths. Some sought happiness in wealth, spending lifetimes accumulating possessions, yet their hearts remained unsatisfied. Others sought pleasure in the body, indulging in sensual desire, yet the body decays and the pleasures fade. Still others sought recognition, power, or influence, yet these too pass, leaving only attachment, fear, and sorrow. The monk saw that the root of all these wanderings is the ignorance of the builder, the unawareness that craving, aversion, and delusion construct the house of suffering again and again. He reflected on his own previous lifetimes, understanding that in each existence, attachment and desire had led him into forms and circumstances that produced suffering, often without his conscious recognition. He understood that the sorrow of repeated birth is not punishment, but a natural consequence of unwholesome actions and a mirror to awaken effort, mindfulness, and insight. With this understanding, he cultivated diligence. He trained the mind to observe the arising of desire and aversion, noting how thoughts of past regrets, future fears, and present dissatisfaction arise unbidden. He trained the heart to respond with patience, compassion, and understanding, knowing that every sentient being experiences similar cycles of craving and ignorance. Meditation became a daily refuge, a practice of seeing clearly the nature of suffering, impermanence, and the selfless nature of phenomena. Through mindfulness, he noticed the body, the breath, and the sensations that arise and pass, understanding that clinging to them only strengthens the foundations of samsara. Ethical conduct became an extension of this awareness, guiding every action, word, and thought. He reflected upon how simple deeds of kindness and restraint accumulate merit and clarity, gradually weakening the hold of craving and ignorance. He saw that each small effort to act rightly, to cultivate insight, or to practice mindfulness is a step toward dismantling the house built by ignorance. Observing the world around him, the monk realized that countless beings continue to wander blindly, unaware of the builder of their own suffering. Parents pass desires and attachments to children. Communities reinforce craving through habits and customs, and society glorifies impermanent pleasures. Yet the path of Dhamma offers liberation to all who are willing to awaken, to see clearly, and to practice diligently. The monk taught those around him to recognize impermanence in all things, to observe the arising of craving, and to cultivate insight and virtue. He emphasized that freedom is not found in external searching, but in the understanding of the mind, in uprooting the causes of repeated birth. Over time, the monk noticed a profound shift within himself. The sorrow that once accompanied the recognition of repeated birth softened into compassionate resolve. He no longer despaired at the inevitability of aging, sickness, or death, for he understood that these are natural phenomena that can guide one to awaken. The mind, trained in observation, patience, and discernment, became a sanctuary, a place of freedom within which the causes of suffering can be seen and released. He also reflected on the impermanence of others, extending compassion to all sentient beings. Each act of kindness, each meditation, each word of guidance became a seed of awakening, a contribution to the dismantling of the house of suffering. In this way, the monk realized that the sorrow of repeated birth, though profound, is also the beginning of understanding and the doorway to liberation. By observing, practicing, and teaching, he worked to weaken the influence of craving and ignorance, both in himself and in others. He understood that even a single moment of insight, one recognition of the causes of suffering, can redirect the course of countless lives, guiding beings toward freedom and awakening. The monk reflected upon the precious opportunity of human birth, seeing that only in a mind capable of understanding, reflection, and effort can one awaken. The sorrow of repeated birth became a teacher, inspiring diligence, patience, and unwavering commitment to the cultivation of wisdom and virtue. The cycles of samsara, once sorrowful, became the mirror that clarified the urgency of practice. With every breath, he reaffirmed the resolve to observe the mind, to act with compassion, and to cultivate insight. The monk understood that the Dhamma is the path out of wandering, the guide that reveals the builder and shows how to dismantle the house of suffering. Life, though filled with impermanence, loss, and sorrow, became a field of practice, a continuous opportunity to uproot craving, cultivate clarity, and extend benefit to all beings. Through reflection, meditation, and ethical action, the monk realized that while the sorrow of repeated birth is undeniable, freedom is possible. The mind, once trained and awakened, transcends the cycle of suffering, seeing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all conditioned things. Each moment of practice weakens the influence of the builder, and each act of wisdom and compassion strengthens liberation for self and others. The monk, through his understanding and practice, became a living example of the teaching. Even in the midst of repeated birth and wandering, one can awaken to freedom, peace, and the realization of the Dhamma, revealing the path to countless beings. The monk, having observed deeply the nature of repeated birth, reflected on the fleetingness of every life, the impermanence of every body, and the transitory nature of all worldly forms. He saw that even the most beautiful surroundings, the most powerful positions, and the most cherished relationships pass away, leaving only the mind to face the truth of impermanence. Through this reflection, sorrow arose, not a sorrow of despair, but a sorrow that sharpens awareness, that awakens diligence, and that inspires effort on the path. He recognized that every moment of attachment, every indulgence in craving, strengthens the foundation of the house, compelling continued wandering in samsara. The monk understood that the root cause of repeated birth is not outside the self, but within, the unawareness, craving, and aversion that construct the cycles of suffering. Turning inward, he cultivated mindfulness, observing every thought, every feeling, every sensation. He saw how desires arise unbidden, how anger and irritation flare and fade, how attachment colors perception. In this observation, he began to see the nature of the builder, the habitual tendencies that repeatedly reconstruct the house of suffering. Compassion arose naturally, for he recognized that all beings are subject to these same tendencies. The sorrow of repeated birth became a teacher, reminding him that every living being longs for happiness, yet often walks blindfolded through the cycles of suffering. He committed himself to ethical conduct, not as a rigid rule, but as a path to clarity, serenity, and insight. He practiced restraint in action, speech, and thought, seeing that each ethical act diminishes the power of craving and aversion, weakens the foundations of the house, and nurtures the seeds of liberation. Meditation became the mirror in which he saw clearly the arising and passing of phenomena. Each sensation, each thought, each fleeting emotion revealed the impermanent nature of the world, the futility of clinging, and the freedom that arises through awareness. He observed that even repeated sorrow, when met with mindfulness and compassion, becomes a guide, leading one to discern the causes of suffering and to practice diligently toward liberation. In daily life, he applied these insights. While walking, working, or speaking with others, he remained mindful, observing the mind's reactions, the arising of desire, aversion, and delusion, and responding with patience, understanding, and compassion. The sorrow of repeated birth became an ever-present reminder of the precious opportunity of human life, of the urgency to practice, to cultivate wisdom, and to awaken to freedom. Through his practice, he began to experience moments of profound clarity, where the habitual tendencies of craving and ignorance loosened, and the mind rested in insight. He saw that the cycles of birth and death, though sorrowful, are not without remedy. By understanding the builder, by cultivating ethical conduct, mindfulness, and wisdom, one can dismantle the house and awaken. Over time, the monk shared his understanding with others, teaching that the sorrow of repeated birth is universal. Yet liberation is available to all who are willing to observe, reflect, and practice. He guided others to recognize impermanence, to cultivate ethical living, to train the mind in awareness, and to practice compassion toward all beings. Through this guidance, the seeds of awakening spread, and countless lives were inspired to turn inward, to observe the causes of suffering, and to follow the path toward freedom. He saw that while the sorrow of repeated birth touches all beings, the path of Dhamma illuminates a way beyond, offering clarity, peace, and liberation. The monk, through persistent practice, reflection, and compassionate action, embodied the teaching fully. He understood that the cycles of birth, aging, and death are universal, yet the mind, trained in awareness, virtue, and insight, transcends these cycles. He witnessed that liberation is not distant, but arises moment by moment, as one uproots craving, cultivates understanding, and acts with compassion. Each day, he reaffirmed diligence, seeing every moment of life as an opportunity to practice, to awaken, and to benefit all beings. The sorrow of repeated birth, once a source of despair, became a source of inspiration, guiding him to cultivate the qualities of the mind that endure beyond the body, beyond time, and beyond suffering. Through patient practice, careful observation, and steadfast commitment, he discovered freedom, peace, and the realization of the Dhamma. Thus, the teaching of the Blessed One shines clearly. Repeated birth is sorrowful, yet through understanding the causes, cultivating virtue, practicing mindfulness, and developing insight, one can awaken to liberation, and in doing so, reveal the path for countless others. The mind, once wandering endlessly in samsara, finds rest, clarity, and freedom, and the Dhamma, timeless and enduring, guides all who are willing to see and practice. Thank you for watching my video. Namo Amitabha. I wish to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time.